Hi, this is Rachel from the Dotting Center. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to dot this beginner-friendly floral dot mandala design. This is an easy beginner-level project that will show you all the basics on how to get started dot painting. We'll also create some dot shapes and use some techniques to help bring your dotting skills up to a new level. I am so happy that you're joining me today, so grab your paints and your tools and let's paint this simple and beautiful mandala together. So we're painting a canvas today, so one thing I like to do is use a Lazy Susan. This one I got for $3 at Target. You can find them literally everywhere. This is a 4-inch canvas. And we're just going to place that aside for now. I use these dividers to divide all of my canvases. There are 3 different divider stencils in this pack. You could also use a ruler if you'd like. Also need a compass, a chalk pencil. You'll also need some dotting tools. I recommend these. These are great for beginners all the way up to advanced dotting artists. A great set to start to learn on and grow with. You'll also need some stylus tools, and that's about it. Now let's talk paints. I like to use this chalk acrylic for my base coat so that my chalk pencil shows up. And then you'll want to pick 2 colors that you like, as well as gold and white. So we're going to start off with a 4-inch square canvas. I like to use chalk paint for my base coats because I use stencils with all of my dot paintings, and chalk pencils just show up better on chalk paint. Here are the colors that I picked for this project. Just pick 2 colors that you like and then white and gold. And now to set up the palette, basically what you want in the end is your color plus 2 tints of that color. So you'll mix white with the color until you have about a 50% of that color and then a maybe 20 or 30% tint of that color. The way to check is take some of your midtone and put a dot of it in the darker side and the lighter side, and if you can see it, if it shows up, then you're good. Here is a trick. Take some putty, put it on the back of your canvas, and use a Lazy Susan. When you're dotting, it really helps to keep your hand in the same position as you're dotting. That way your dots kind of stay in line a lot better. These are the 3 stencils that I offer, the divider stencils for smaller objects. They're very easy to find center on canvases as well as rounded objects. They work on mugs, they work on stones, and this is the chalk pencil that I like to use. Basically what you do is you find center by aligning the stencil to the canvas. Just pay attention to the outside edges of the lines and make sure that the margins are equal. And there you go. It's divided. It takes very little time and promise you it will save you headaches in the end because your dots will just stay on track. And then the final step to get our grid is we just want to use a compass to make concentric circles. Just every once in a while. It doesn't have to be a lot. Here I'm using 4 different circles, and that's just going to keep all of the rows in line. All right, let's start painting. Okay, so we're going to make a large center dot using the number 12 tool. Just make sure that your tool is perpendicular to the canvas, especially the larger size tools. And then to keep my tools clean, I just like to wipe off the paint in between colors. So this is a beginner level project, so I definitely recommend using number 2 as your first small size. What you want to do is place a dot at each of the intersecting lines, not touching that center dot, and just spend some time here making sure that your dots line up with all of the divider lines. So really just focus on this first row of dots. Make sure they're all equally spaced. Make sure that the paint at the end of your tool is the same amount, not too much, not too little, just enough to place one dot. And if you find that there are dots that are too small, you can redot them to kind of make them open up. So we were using number 2. Now we're going to jump to the number 4 tool. So we're going to use this size. So we're going to skip a size, and we're going to use the lightest color of purple. And what you want to do is place this dot in between the previous 2 dots so that it kind of fits right in between those two. And see how I'm using that first circle as a guide? So the outer edge of the dot is touching the outer line of that circle, and then depending on wherever you placed your circle, you would just use it as a visual guide. So everyone is different. Some artists like a whole lot of concentric circles out from the center, and some artists don't. Some artists don't use any concentric circles or divider lines. It really just depends on what you prefer as to how much of a structure you're going to have with your divider lines and everything. All right, so we're going to stick with even numbers. So I jumped from a number 4 tool to a number 6, and we're going to go in with the mid-tone of that purple shade. And we're going to place this dot in between the previous 2 dots. Notice how this dot lines up on the divider line. So you have that as a reference as well as the previous row of dots. Okay, so now at the end of this row, we're going to take our tool and jump a couple sizes. We're going to keep with the even numbers. So grab your green tool, number 8. And now let's dot with 100% purple. And this is going to be right in between the divider lines. So this is a pattern that you could practice every single day and basically work with the space in between the dots, whether they're closer or farther apart, and come up with infinite varieties on that basic design. Now let's switch tools. Let's use a stylus tool and walk the dots, making kind of like a petal shape around these dots. So the fun thing about these tools is you can load the tool with paint and then dot a series of dots around the border of where you are painting, like a border edge, and it creates dots that descend in size. So your first dot's going to be the biggest and your last dot is going to be the smallest, and it just creates a cool lacy edge. Now let's add a second row of those stylus dots. We'll walk the dots using gold. So we'll use a different paint color and do another row of that same style of dots. Now here is our very first dot shape. It's a teardrop. What you do is you dot twice with a larger tool. In this case, I'm using the number 8 tool. The reason you dot twice is just to get enough paint in that circle of paint so that you can use your stylus tool or a number 1 tool, something with a small size tip, to drag that paint out into a teardrop form. And you can place multiple dots. Here I'm using the number 1 tool. Whatever has a small point at the end will work. And you basically use that pool of paint and drag it wherever you want it to go. And now let's take that stylus tool and add a border of dots. So again, you'll take your stylus tool, load it once, and then walk the dots. Here I'm using that circle. You can see where that circle ends is where my dots end. That way they all kind of end at the same place. And now let's use a different color. I think here we're using the lightest shade of blue, and we'll do a double row of that border edge. So now that this row is completed, we're going to let this dry 100%. Just let it dry, because the next step is we're going to add top dots. And this is fun. This is cool. What you want to use is a size smaller than the previous dot, and use a color that's either darker or lighter than the shade that you used for your first level of dots. So how do you know what size tool to use? Well, you want to remember that your warm colored tools, so your red, orange, and yellow, are the smaller sizes, while the green, blue, and purple and the pink are the larger sizes. And you just want to use a tool that is going to create a dot that's small enough to show up with a little bit of your base color border. One thing you can do is basically dry fit the tool. So place the tool without any paint on the surface that you're about to dot, and just see, account for a little bit of paint to spread. So you want to get maybe a size smaller than you think you might need, and just see what kind of border it's going to give you. So now, as you are working with these, you'll see that there are spaces that you could possibly fill with small detail dots. Use colors that you think are going to show up well. So here we're going to use the number 3 tool. You can see that you can still walk the dots with the smaller size dotting tools. And what I'm doing is every other petal I'm using white. And then I switched to gold and did all of the alternate petals in gold. And that's just a different variation. I think it looks pretty neat. So now let's take some of that lavender color and bring it out into the petals. You can see there's a space right in between each one of those petals, and a dot fits perfectly right there. And then while I was dotting that one, I noticed there was a space right above where I could fit a smaller dot right above that row. And now let's add a green dot just at the end to fill out that space. And now is a good time to take a break, walk away, and let this dry. And we're going to put more highlight top dots on. This is using a stylus tool. We're using the lightest green, and you just dot and drag. That creates a nice teardrop on top. So when you first start dotting, you might want to try this on paper first, just to get a feel for how much paint to load onto the end of your stylus tool, because the more paint you add, the longer you're able to drag that paint out. It's a feel thing, and sometimes it's better to have a little tiny bit of practice before you hit your canvas. So at the end of your project, this is kind of fun because you can pick and choose where you want highlights to go. Use each of the tints of your colors to kind of pop out those shapes. Things start to come together, and adding colors to the center dot is just so fun. Everything just kind of comes to life right at the end. So once you have all of your highlighted dots in place, let that dry. And then once your painting is fully dry, take a wet cloth and just wipe away all of those chalk lines. Just being careful not to rub off any paint, and you can finish with a final varnish coat or just leave it like this. So there it is, your final painting. I hope you loved this video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. And as always, if you need any dotting supplies, go head over to thedottingcenter.com and get yourself something nice, make some art. Until next time, guys, bye.